Okay, folks, I'm actually going to refilm the video that I already released on Library and on Rumble concerning the Tucker Carlson versus Sidney Powell beef. And I just wanted to do that because there were a couple technical issues with the video, nothing to do with the sites. So if you've already seen the video, sorry if I repeat some of the things, but I wanted to get across some of the issues that I think are leading to it, and really my perspective on what people should do. So first things first, I would say that Sidney Powell and Tucker Carlson are both doing their jobs, even if you don't like the way that either of them is doing it and the way that one of them is stepping on the other's toes. And I'll explain why. Tucker Carlson is not beholden to Donald Trump. He's been critical of Donald Trump for a couple years over a number of issues, especially I believe H-1B visas and other critical immigration-related pieces of legislation, over his refusal to deal with some of the big multinational corporations, especially big pharma and big tech. Do I think that Tucker Carlson is doing it out of genuine care and the compassion of his heart? I don't know. Probably not. You never can trust anyone. And I don't really personally feel a strong, tendency either way. I don't watch Tucker Carlson's show. I don't even have broadcast TV. I basically mostly consume my news from different channels on YouTube. Once in a while, yeah, I'll click on a Tucker Carlson video. I might click on a Maria Bartiromo video. I might click on, what's that guy's name? Stuart Varney from Fox News, but I don't like the network. I've never been really, beholden to Fox News. I used to watch the O'Reilly Factor, and you could say that before I was voting, I did like some of O'Reilly's material. But the truth is that the network has always been dishonest at a number of its endeavors, and Tucker Carlson is he's an excellent example of someone who I think has tried to bury his past, maybe try to make amends for some of it. He was, in fact, a supporter of the Iraq War when it did happen. And he did apologize for it. And he did try to say, well, I was wrong. Those of us that were a part of that effort to justify the Iraq War were wrong. And a number of the other things that we allowed to slip by under President Bush were wrong. And that the idea of being either a right winger or a conservative suffered because of what we did. However, that doesn't make up for the fact that Tucker Carlson works for a large multinational corporation owned by News Corp. At least part of it is owned by News Corp. I think some of Fox is even owned by Disney now. I'm not even sure how it works. It's a very, and that's really the problem here. And that's why I kept this graphic up, which is, I think, going to be one of my main background graphics for a little while. These networks are not really conducive to editorial freedom. And I know, and this is something that I've learned to deal with as someone who, is above the age of 14, I know that there's going to be news stories that I will find, annoying and bothersome and maybe, disagree with entirely, right? And there's many people who don't know how to cope with that. They think that if there's negative press in the media, even inflammatory press, the best solution is to deplatform the person talking about it. And then you have media watchdogs, you have people like Media Matters for America, you have Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting, you have what do you call it? The honestreporting.org, Camera, you have different, I think CARE does it. You have all these organizations, and all of them say the media is too slanted to one side or the other. That's the way it's going to be. Unfortunately, the media corporations, they look out after their own financial interest. And sometimes their financial interest isn't screwing you. And that's really the problem here. So, and then on the other side, you do have Sidney Powell. She's making extraordinary claims. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Tucker Carlson wants to see that evidence. Does he have a right to see that evidence before everybody else does? Or does the American people have a right to see that evidence before it's duly presented in court? Technically, no. So Sidney Powell is well within her rights to refuse to give him too much. If she deems his questions too probing, and she thinks that he will harm her case, she's under no obligation to disclose anything. He is also under no obligation not to ask anything of her. So, or not to ask more probing questions. As a reporter, as a media member, you don't have to like Tucker Carlson. I personally am, 50-50 on him. He has the right to demand evidence, right? And that goes down to really the main theme here, that if people are too emotionally invested in the outcome here, I get it that, look, I personally am hopeful that something good will come of this situation. And the best situation, in my opinion, will be that the election will be overturned and something like that will happen. I wish that would happen. I am not going to bet money on it. I don't have a trust in the system. And I think that Sidney Powell herself, when she goes to bed at night, knows that, unfortunately, justice is not really the product of our justice system, of our legal system. Unfortunately, the law is often interpreted by people who have conflicting interests or personal flaws or corrupt motives and things like that. That's the way that mankind has operated for eternity, and we're going to suffer for it, unfortunately. And people have to cope with that fact that if you've been enjoying your life for the past 4 years, or just like maybe some people enjoyed their lives under Obama or under Bush, as hard as it is to maybe think, I love the Bush administration, it was amazing, right? That gas was what? I think at one point gas was like $4.50 a gallon, even though we'd invaded a country in order to drive the gas prices down, right? People let him off the hook after a while, right? Tucker Carlson, is not going to be the person who decides whether this legal effort by Sidney Powell succeeds. Her legal effort has to succeed on its own merit. And the truth of the matter is that it could fail. And she has alleged many, many very, I would say, the word would be, extraordinary, fantastical claims. And while they may be well founded, they might not have enough hard evidence in order to render a judgment in a court of law. And that's really the issue here. So if you were a Tucker Carlson fan until now and you're abandoning his show because of this, it's not the right reason. Why should you maybe abandon being a Tucker Carlson watcher? Well, for starters, Tucker Carlson's wrong about things sometimes too. And I think he's humble enough to admit that. I don't think he's the picture of humility, but he's wrong about some things sometimes too. The other reason that you might want to maybe at least be skeptical of Tucker Carlson, even if you like his show, and you're feeling conflicted over this saga with Sidney Powell. And this is just a theory of mine, and you don't have to believe it. This is just me thinking out loud and observing what could happen in the future. Tucker Carlson has the potential to be the successor for the America First movement. And the reason for that is on many issues where the core Make America Great Again voter has been behind Donald Trump, meaning immigration, meaning skepticism of big corporations, skepticism of free trade, skepticism of China. Tucker Carlson has been more hardcore than Donald Trump. And it could be, and this is just a possibility, right? You don't have to say that okay, I'm not saying that this is happening, but I'm saying it could be the reason that it is happening. It could be that Tucker Carlson sees it, that Trump losing the election would open a lane for him in the future to strike out on his own, perhaps run a major political campaign in competition with Trump if Trump runs again, or in place of Trump if Trump is, he is pretty old, and be the next Donald Trump and the person to win the White House in 2024. And it wouldn't be the worst plan. I don't think that they're a one-to-one comparison. For starters, Tucker Carlson has a little bit more of a mild disposition. He doesn't have that bombastic flourish that Donald Trump has. And while you might think that it's good that he doesn't have that, it did it did help fire up a lot of the people and people. I mean, remember, Donald Trump was a rock star in many senses, in a larger sense, way before he was a politician, right? Tucker Carlson is a little different. He's a commentator. He's an opinion journalist. If you want to call him a journalist, whatever. He's a media commentator. He's a pundit. It is not really common for those types of people to translate into successes in politics. It just isn't. And there are many people who would look at that, and you could point to people like Al Franken. He was a successful commentator, and they would say, well, what about him? He became a senator and everything. Right, he became a senator, and what did he do? He didn't do jack shit. He did nothing. He ended up getting canceled by his own party for grabbing some woman's boobs. It is not necessarily a good lateral move from being a commentator when you have a little bit more freedom of maneuvering, able to say whatever you want, to going into Congress and having to deal with the pressures and that's one of the reasons that a system is broken. That people who have strong ideological opinions may be blunted from voicing them in Congress. You see what's happened on the left to Ocasio-Cortez, and she's become basically the poodle of the DNC, even though she's once in a while she virtue signals that she's fighting the Democratic establishment. She didn't fight shit. She basically rolled over just like the rest of them. And you see on the Republican side, you have the Freedom Caucus. Once in a while, they'll have a victory. Very, very seldomly do you have the Freedom Caucus or Rand Paul actually succeed in moving the Republican Party back to maybe the vision of its base, which is defending the Second Amendment, fighting abortion, and restoring religious liberty and things like that, and possibly going into more libertarian ideas like reducing the deep state, which a lot of the Republican Party is blatantly against, right? And that brings me to another issue with Sidney Powell that I think you should just address in your own heads. Sidney Powell is, I think, doing something that is very risky, and if it succeeds, yes, I think she's owed basically a debt of gratitude by every American who believes in an electoral system that can be relied upon, that's reliable, that's trustworthy, that is fair. If she succeeds, she's owed all the gratitude for it. And it could be, and this is something that I want people to understand as well, it could be that her and the Giuliani lawsuits, the ones that are more directly connected to Trump, it could be that they don't overturn the presidential election. But you know what they could do? They could flip a couple House seats. They even have the potential in Michigan of flipping one Senate seat to the GOP. It could be significant if you're a GOP partisan. It might not be that big of a deal if you realize that the GOP is extremely flawed and could probably be, unfortunately, an enabler of bad policies under Biden, right? So that's one thing to think about. Another thing to think about is that the downside is she is going up against really an entrenched system of government that's been that way for many, many, many years. I mean, at least since the end of World War II, if not longer, which is that the secret intelligence agencies and the military-industrial complex behind them, they are powerful enough that the judicial system, the legislative system, indeed even executive officials like Donald Trump, they're not cut from strong enough fabric in order to deal with them. And this is obvious if you just have a pair of eyes and read what's going on with some of the trials that have happened and some of the trials that have not happened. You have, on the one hand, and you can look this up, and this is not going to be a very strongly sourced video, but just remember the names that I'm saying right now and type them into your search engine of choice. You have James Clapper on the one hand, who committed basically one of the biggest violations of Fourth Amendment protections for the entire country, for all Americans, regardless of race, background, creed, class, by gathering data without a warrant through the NSA and basically spying on Americans wholesale. And this was exposed by a contractor for the NSA through Booz Allen Hamilton, a massive defense contractor in Washington. I think it's in Washington, D.C. It might be somewhere like Virginia or something. Edward Snowden, he exposed it through WikiLeaks and through Glenn Greenwald, credit where credit's due. And what happened? Well, you don't see James Clapper in prison. You don't see John Brennan in prison. You don't see James Comey in prison. You don't see any of the people who gathered that data in prison because there's nobody enforcing the law on the enforcers. You don't have anyone watching the watchdogs. They are able to do whatever they want with impunity, and the legislative and executive branches have granted them those powers, and they no longer have the capacity to control it. And we're basically living in a world where there are parallel legal systems. There's a legal system that people who are not connected have to deal with, where if you would do something like that, you would be thrown in the slammer for nothing. And if you are connected to it, you can do it basically without any fear of recourse because it's national security. That's what they say. On the other hand, you have General Michael Flynn, who was he was in some cases a rogue within the Obama administration, disagreed heavily with a lot of their attitudes towards things like Iran, towards things maybe like Russia, towards a number of the other, I think also towards Afghanistan. He was one of the advocates of retreating from Afghanistan, of withdrawing forces from Afghanistan. Sound a little familiar? And Michael Flynn, for doing something that was part of his purview as an official, an incoming official of the Trump administration, as the designated national security advisor, he was prosecuted basically under the pretense that he was communicating without authorization with Russian government officials and that he had lied to the FBI about it, when in reality, FBI 302s, which are the interview notes that FBI agents take. Remember, FBI agents, with all their sophisticated capabilities, what do? They write down their interviews on notepads called 302s. And basically, it's a notepad. And that's what they submit as their evidence. So they say, oh, this guy was lying to me. Here's the evidence. I'm an FBI agent. Believe me, they were lying. They was lying to me. I was had. So that's basically the evidence that the FBI had against Michael Flynn. And what happened in court after basically he has to go through the 7 circles of hell. His lawyer, Sidney Powell, exposes the fact that the FBI knew that there was no evidence of any Russian collusion. They knew that he was not lying about anything. They had even said in their own private meetings, oh, let's get him to not bring an attorney so he can't have counsel present in order to advise him on how to answer the FBI agents, Joe Pientka and I think it was Peter Strzok, how to answer their questions. Let's also perhaps prosecute him under the Logan Act. Things that, if we're being consistent, the Biden president-elect Biden, right? Under those, he is basically he's violating all the time. Apparently, I think it was Ben Rhodes, the former deputy national security advisor under Obama. He admitted as much. He admitted that the Biden transition team is violating the Logan Act because they are talking to foreign leaders already. So there is no consistency here. And that's really why you should have a little bit of skepticism of Sidney Powell, because she's trying to do through the legal system what the rest of the system won't do. And do you think the legal system is not unaware that some of these judges are not unaware that they could have repercussions against them if they do something contrary to what these people like James Clapper and John Brennan want? Those people have had no accountability whatsoever. Those are the people who are really the problem with the country. It's not Donald Trump. And to be honest with you, I think Obama is less of a problem than them. I think Obama's definitely been a problem. I think he's a horrible person. I think President Bush is part of the problem as well. But People have to really hunker down. If they want to be informed, they often have to look for the information. It's not as easy as maybe people thought in the past, where you would open up a newspaper in the morning. You are not getting news that is tailored in order to inform you. It's in order to condition you. It's in order to give you a reality that you will think is, amenable to your worldview already. It's not meant to change your mind. It's not meant, or if it is meant to change your mind, it's in order to bully you into doing it. It's in order to fearmonger you into it. So, with that being said, I think there are news sources you can go to. Unfortunately, Tucker Carlson, maybe some of you don't like. I personally don't care. But if you want to go to a news source that you think could be a little bit closer to your worldview, I think that there's some on both sides of the aisle. The first one, and this one might come as a surprise, it's called the Duran on YouTube. I can actually pull it up, and they are, I would say, actually phenomenal people. It's Alex Christoforou and Alexander Mercouris, and they are just amazing at explaining a lot of geopolitical issues and I'll show you their YouTube channel, but they are on LBRY and BitChute. So, one second. This server is slow as hell. But yeah, here you go. So this is the Duran. Another source that I think you should probably take a look at is the Dan Bongino and his various other things, the Bongino Report. So he's more of a conservative source. And if you're a little bit more on the left, you probably might already know there's the Jimmy Dore Show and people like Glenn Greenwald and things like that. And maybe sample a little of all of them. Maybe watch RT once in a while. Maybe watch Republic Today Television from India, which is and Arnav Goswami, somebody that one of my viewers and friends, Arjun, put me on to learn a little bit about other countries, things that don't have nothing to do with you that might still affect you. So that's about it. Please like, share, and subscribe. And you can also find me, if this is the right image. Whoops. Here we go. So you can find me on YouTube, BitChute, Minds.com, Subscribestar, Gab, LBRY, Parler, or Rumble. So the video sites are YouTube, BitChute, LBRY, and Rumble. I personally prefer LBRY, but you can make your choice, and then there's the other ones as well. And have a great day.